Hello everyone, welcome back to my 4-part series where I go over 4 true crime cases that left a mark on 2025. In this video, we break down the murder-for-hire scheme that killed Dan Markel and rocked his family. Before I get into the video, I need to say, please do not send hate to anyone mentioned in this video. The video is made for entertainment only. On the morning of July 18, 2014, at around 11 a.m., Tallahassee resident James Geiger heard what sounded like gunshots coming from his neighbor's home. Moments later, he noticed a car speeding away from the driveway. Concerned, Geiger went to check on the neighbor's house. When he reached the garage, he found 41-year-old law professor Dan Markel lying on the ground, badly injured and bleeding. Geiger immediately called 911, telling the dispatcher that Markel was still alive, breathing and moving slightly, but unresponsive. When police arrived, they discovered Dan Markel seated in his car inside his open garage with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The driver's side window had been broken, and bullet fragments and blood spatter were present inside the vehicle. Markel's wallet, phone, and other valuables were undisturbed, and investigators found no evidence of a struggle or forced entry. His car was still running, and the garage door was open, indicating the shooter acted quickly and departed immediately. The nature of the wounds and the scene suggested a deliberate, execution-style attack rather than a random robbery or accident. Markel was transported to the nearest hospital in Tallahassee, where he was treated for his head wounds and injuries. Sadly, he never regained consciousness and was pronounced dead 1 day later, on July 19. After Markel's death, police obtained surveillance footage, traffic camera images, and license plate reader data, showing a light-colored Toyota Prius traveling along Dan Markel's route the morning of the shooting. Surveillance footage clearly shows Markel being followed on the morning of July 18, 2014. Minutes after he arrived at the Premier Health and Fitness Center, a silver-green Toyota Prius entered the parking lot and remained there while he worked out. When Markel later left the gym, the same Prius exited immediately behind him. City bus cameras then captured the Prius continuing to follow Markel along Thomasville Road. Another bus camera recorded the Prius again as it turned onto Benton Road where Markel lived, just minutes before the shooting. Using this evidence, investigators were able to identify the driver of the car, Sigfredo Garcia. Sigfredo Garcia was a 34-year-old South Florida man with a prior criminal history and no apparent connection to Dan Markel. Sigfredo was not alone on the day Markel was shot. With him was 33-year-old Rivera, who also had a previous criminal record. Police determined that on July 15, 3 days before Markel was shot, Garcia and Rivera rented a Toyota Prius in North Miami. Then, based on cell phone records and surveillance footage, traveled north to Tallahassee. The pair arrived in Tallahassee shortly after midnight and rented a motel room on North Monroe Street, less than 2 miles from Markel's home. Authorities believe that Garcia was the one who shot Markel, while Rivera was driving the Toyota Prius on the morning of the murder. The question that naturally arises is how was Dan Markel connected to Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera? The answer is through Markel's ex-wife, Wendi Adelson. Dan Markel and Wendi Adelson met while both were students at Florida State University, where Markel studied law and Adelson pursued international relations and related social sciences. The couple married and had 2 young children together, but by 2012 their relationship had deteriorated. That year, Adelson filed for divorce and sought to move with the children to South Florida, but Markel opposed the move, and in 2013 a judge ruled that she and the children must remain in Tallahassee. Throughout the marriage and during the divorce, members of the Adelson family consistently disapproved of Markel and expressed hostility toward him. On the day Markel was shot in July 2014, Tallahassee police brought Wendi Adelson in for questioning at the police station after they located her following the shooting. Law enforcement interviewed her for several hours as part of their investigation. Detectives asked Wendi if she knew anyone who might have a motive to kill Markel, including people who were angry with him or who might benefit from his death. She told investigators she had no idea who would do something like this and insisted she would never want Markel killed, even though their marriage and divorce had been difficult. During the interview, she mentioned that her brother, Charlie Adelson, had joked in the past about hiring a hitman, saying it would be cheaper than buying a TV. A comment she described as a tasteless joke and not a serious threat. Wendi did not believe her family was responsible for Markel's death despite acknowledging that some relatives had disliked him. While further investigating Charlie Adelson, the police found a compelling link between Charlie and the main suspect Sigfredo Garcia. Turns out, at the time of Dan Markel was murdered, Charlie was dating a woman named Katherine Magbanua. Magbanua and Garcia had previously been in a relationship and had a child together. Phone records showed intense contact between Charlie and Katherine in the period leading up to and immediately after the killing. After Dan Markel's murder, evidence showed that Charlie Adelson provided Katherine Magbanua with a large amount of cash, ultimately totaling approximately $100,000. The payments were not made all at once. Instead, they were delivered in multiple installments, some shortly after the killing and others later, which prosecutors argued was consistent with staged compensation rather than a single legitimate expense. There were no contracts, invoices, or written agreements documenting the alleged purpose of the money. On May 24, 2016, Sigfredo Garcia was brought into the police for questioning. During interrogation, Garcia denied killing Dan Markel. The next day, May 25, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and possession of cocaine. Less than a month later, Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera were both indicted for Dan Markel's murder. While Sigfredo pleaded not guilty, Rivera pleaded guilty to second-degree murder as part of a plea deal with prosecutors and was sentenced to 19 years in prison, with the requirement that he cooperate and testify against others in the case. Luis Rivera testified that Sigfredo Garcia recruited him to travel from South Florida to Tallahassee and provided Markel's photo and address, explaining that the murder was coordinated through Katherine Magbanua. Rivera drove the rented Toyota Prius while Garcia exited the car and shot Markel in his garage, a fact he witnessed firsthand. After the murder, Garcia called Magbanua, who instructed him to ensure the payment was handled. Evidence showed that Magbanua distributed tens of thousands of dollars in cash to the hitmen, including about $35,000 to Rivera and $40,000 to Garcia. Financial records later showed Charlie Adelson gave large sums of cash to Magbanua, which he claimed were for a broken television, but prosecutors argued the timing and amounts were inconsistent with that explanation. Rivera confirmed that he and Garcia had no direct contact with Charlie Adelson, and all coordination went through Magbanua, making her the central figure in planning the plot. He also described the disposal of the murder weapon, further reinforcing the premeditated nature of the crime. Rivera's cooperation allowed prosecutors to convict Garcia in October 2019 and Magbanua in May 2022, both receiving life in prison without the possibility of parole. With the shooters identified and the payments traced, police then focused on uncovering who was behind the decision to have the victim killed. Investigators alleged that Charlie Adelson and his mother, Donna Adelson, were both involved in the murder-for-hire plot against Dan Markel. Prosecutors said Charlie handled the logistics, using Katherine Magbanua as the go-between connecting him to the hired shooters. Phone records and financial evidence showed Charlie arranging and delivering large cash payments after the murder, which Magbanua passed on to the hitmen. Donna, prosecutors argued, played a higher-level role driven by the custody dispute over her grandchildren and Markel's refusal to allow their relocation. Call records showed Donna contacting Charlie immediately after key developments, demonstrating she knew how to activate the communication chain tied to the plot. Magbanua testified that Charlie told her the plan to kill Markel originated with his parents and that Donna was aware of and supported it. Charlie Adelson was convicted in November 2023 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Donna Adelson was convicted in October 2025 and also sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think justice was fully served in the Dan Markel case, or could more members of the Adelson family have been involved? Wendi Adelson and her father are still out there, so do you think they played any role? Share your opinions respectfully in the comments below. If you found this video informative, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me keep making content like this. Until next time, bye.